How's it going, guys? Welcome back. So today we're going to be looking at another engine game, but this time not Chess 960. I wanted to see if Leela could beat Stockfish 8 in a 5 minute per move game from, just a regular position. And Leela drew from black and then ended up taking the W this game. And I'm not spoiling much because it's kind of obvious that Leela's going to beat Stockfish 8. But the way that it did it this game was pretty crazy. And I should have an easier time explaining the moves because since it's not Chess 960, I actually know some of the openings, especially because we start with E4. And this is my repertoire. It's met with E6. And here you have a few options. You can play D4. You can play knight f3. I usually play knight f3, but if the engine goes ahead and plays d4, which is the one I also have played. The main ideas here for black now are to play d5, or sometimes you can play c5, because if you take it, then it just activates black's bishop, and it's really good. So you kind of would just have to ignore it and play d5. But after d5, we don't get the exchange variation. Leela just brings out the knight, and then Stockfish brings out the knight on f6, attacking this pawn with 2. So you have to move this pawn pretty much. The engine is saying bishop g5 also works though, because it would be pinning, and then this couldn't take, right? Because if this happens, then you just take here, and this can't take, right? So here, Leela just goes ahead and pushes the pawn. The knight's going to swing back, and then we get f4. So now, this setup is pretty good in the center. The problem is the king is kind of weak, right? So now the engines are going to start to working towards getting their kings consolidated. At least Leela is. So after this aggressive move by Stockfish, Leela just kind of shuts it down with a calm knight f3. And then Stockfish 8 meets it with another knight coming out, and then we get protecting d4 with the bishop, right? So, if takes, then white's better. So, obviously, Stockfish 8 doesn't want to take yet. So, it brings out the queen, and now there is multiple defenders going at this. But apparently you can actually just ignore it, right? And you can play a3. But what happens, Stockfish 15.1, the browser, at least in my chess.com, is saying that a3 is playable here. But what Leela played was knight a4. So the reason why knight a4 is good is because after queen a5 check, it pretty much looks like you hung a knight, right? But you just block with the pawn and then it guards it. So I don't know why exactly Leela wanted this knight on the back rank. Maybe because it really liked this attack. But after c4, trying to lock it down, Leela just plays b4. Right? Very strong move here, attacking the queen. And if you en passant, then I just take here and I'm going to open up this file, and it's going to be a good game for white. So instead of taking there, Stockfish 8 just brings the queen back, right? And then we get a development move, wanting to castle. Maybe play, let's see, knight c5 next move, it's saying. So, I don't know, yeah, there's some stuff here. But we get b5, knight c5, and then a5. Or wait, sorry. That's next move. We get knight takes, c5 takes, and then a5. So this exchange here, it's pretty good for Leela, honestly, because it locks down this area of the board, and it's going to let Leela consolidate over here, right? And that's going to create a huge attack on this area of the board, right? And you're going to see that in this game, trust me. So after a5, Stockfish 8 trying to break the structure, create some counterplay. Leela just defends it, doesn't care. And then we get castles. So now that the kings are all pretty safe, Black's isn't as safe, I would argue, because of all of this like piece action going on by the white king. I think it's really good. But anyways, we get knight d4, offering a trade, and we do get the trade, but Leela takes with bishop instead of the pawn. And taking with either is playable here, I think, right? Or wait, no, the other option would be to take with queen, sorry. This is actually looking a little more drawish, but it's not a bad move. But anyways, rook comes down to a6. I don't know the exact thought process for this move. Maybe because like the pawn's gonna come up in the future, or like takes here. You know, who knows? But queen e1 is another just crazy move. Probably just wanting to get to this side of the board. You know, attack this. We can see this lineup is gonna be prevalent when this pawn's moved out of the way. So we get the pawn coming up, and then rook slides over. h4, right? And now Stockfish 8 is starting to get a little bit uncomfortable and run out of moves, right? So he has to take there to open up some, files for the rook, and then it ends up doubling up the rooks and creating a battery. So Leela does not care, right? Leela just plays g4 and then g5, right? It does not care at all. And then here it takes back with the f pawn and then brings its bishop up, and black is just kind of having to make some shuffle moves. You see the bishop reroutes to protect this square. The queen is going to come up and probably wanting to go here, I'm assuming. And yeah, that's what we get, queen f4. So now that this square is double protected, right, white's going to have to get some more action on it with something like, bishop h5 maybe, or something like g6 in the future. But here we get king h1, which I don't know why Leela just played king h1 here. It's pretty insane. But yeah. So after king h1, we're gonna get rook sliding down, bishop to f3. I was reading the engine move here, and I thought that Leela was going to play it, to be honest. King g1 is playable here. But anyways, Leela brings the bishop back. The other pawn slides up, kind of trying to cut off this pawn, consolidate this area a little bit, just to slow down the attack. But Leela's just going to slide the rook over and move its king up. So after this rook gets off this file, which I'm assuming it's because, Leela wants to offer a trade here, and Stockfish just didn't want to lose tempo with the trade. So the king's going to slide up, the rook's going to slide over, and then we have h5, right? And you can see Stockfish 8 has just made some moves that, help this area. It's going to have to play f5 eventually, right? Or something like that. But here we have, after h5, king to g3, right? Creating this rook and bishop, protection on the pawn. So if you take, it's no good, right? Because the rook is going to take. And so instead, Stockfish 8 plays bishop down, and then we get h6. So here is where stuff started to get really, really bad for black, right? Because after the queen comes up to f8, bishop sacks on d5. Absolutely insane move. And if you're like, why can't you take it? There's just h7 check, and king h8, e6, f6. You take here, the rook has to take here, king g4, rook to g3 check, king takes, rook a3 check, king g4, rook g3, king takes, and then queen to h6, f takes, king takes, rook takes, king g8, and then up here with the queen. Absolutely insane checkmate that all comes from this one sack right here, right? It all comes from this one sack. Crazy stuff from the engine. But anyway, Stockfish 8 doesn't fall for it, right? It moves the king back, and not wanting h7, obviously. So now that the king's moved back, if you were to try to do something like c6, this bishop's just going to get taken, and now you don't have that h7 move, right? And this is just looking very drawish. But here, instead, we have bishop e4. The queen's going to slide over to protect this square. And then we have c6. This is where it's going to start to get a little bit crazy again, right? The rook's going to have to come back. Then the king comes up. Probably wanting to get out of potential pressure from these angles, I would assume. But I'm not fully sure on that move. Rook h f1, though, is the next move. Because it's creating this battery, hitting f7, right? And it's just going to be no good for black. Because the rook now slides over, and you can see black had to block off this pawn. It tries to come down here, and Leela just opens up this file for its rook. Stockfish 8 tries to go for this check, and you have to take it with en passant, right? If you were to play king h4, this is actually just a draw. This will hold, which is just ridiculous that, you know, en passant is the one thing that saves white here, right? And actually, king to h3 is still a little bit winning, but it's kind of iffy, you can see. So here we get en passant. Rook comes up offering a trade, you know, and black doesn't want to trade, so it wants to trade on this file. And the reason being, if it can get its rook down here, black can create a little bit of counterplay. It's still really good for white, but Leela didn't even like that. It slid its rook over and offered to trade that way. And if you were to just like come back here, you're just going to lose to rook d7, right? Because like if you take, this is just pinned and it's over. But yeah, so here we have takes, rook a3 attacking the pawn. And here, Leela just plays rook g1. It's like, you can take my pawn, right? Because if you take the pawn, king h4 is going to happen, and this square is going to fall very quickly, right? So instead of taking, Stockfish 8 plays this, guarding it with the bishop first, so that, like, if bishop takes, Stockfish 8 can take with the bishop first instead of having to lose the queen right away. So Leela just brings its bishop back down and protects these pawns, right? It's just got this pawn anchor in the middle that's just very strong. It's got this attack going on the black side of the board, you know, the king side of the board, I should say, and it's just ridiculous, right? So this is going to end in about 20 moves from here. Right, and the reason being, actually even a little bit less than that. I think it's about, or wait, no, it's a little bit more than that. It's about 25. But the reason being, there's just too much counterplay for black to stop it. There's not enough moves here, right? Like bishop c5 comes back, rook c1 coming to guard the pawn, and then Leela just moves his king back and plays these stalling moves, right? And just starts threatening this counterplay right here. So now, Stockfish 8 was just like, abandon ship. Like, it thought everything was losing. It thought it had no moves. And, like, I'll show you why. You know, if you were to move somewhere like here, this takes, right? So you can't move anywhere on this diagonal. If you move up here, c7 is playable. Bishop takes, g6 is playable. And it's just going to get really bad. So there's not many moves here for black. So the bishop is sacked. Doesn't even take the pawn. Has to guard this. And then just c7, right? And it's just over. It's just over. Guard that pawn. The other pawn comes up now. And here, Leela even thought that Stockfish could fend off for a little bit longer, and let's see, yeah, Stockfish 15 thinks it could too, with B4, but Stockfish 8 instead played this move, disagreeing with Leela and Stockfish 15, and the problem with that move is H7 is coming, right? And that's how the game is going to end. But if B4 happened, the rook would just come over to D1, and the queen would have to come up, and then this is just going to promote, and it's over. So it didn't really matter. It was going to end pretty quick anyway, right? But yeah, it ends with this crazy move, H7. And the idea is after you take, Leela just plays King G3, right? And what are you going to do? There's no checks on this king. This is coming. If you move your king over, like this, there's just rook H1 still. Because where's your queen going to go? So instead, Stockfish 8 plays B4, but then this move still happens, and it has to take, and then comes up here like with the king, and that's it, right? There's just Queen H4, Queen H6, and that is wraps. Like, there is no way to stop this checkmate. You are not getting out of this. This is a death trap for the king, right? And that's just it. I hope you guys enjoyed this long game. I tried to go a little bit like slower and describe it more in depth this time because it's a regular game, you know, so I wanted to show off the true, like openings and that kind of thing. But anyways, this was a crazy game. You can see all this counterplay got created on the king side. The king slid up. We had an en passant to save the game over there. And all these sliding moves ended up going towards this crazy attack. And then the rook slides over and it was just wraps. I mean, just crazy stuff here. I hope you guys enjoyed. And have a good day.